lawsuit for under color of state law violating somebody's constitutional rights. Or I can just let the person go down the street and hopefully they're taken to a pawn shop, or maybe they're going to kill 15 people. What is the officer going to do? What I've been advising them is to try to engage them in conversation. Do not use lawful authority to stop them, but just talk to the person, find out who they are, what they're doing. But we don't have the ability to use police powers in this situation. It is an untenable position. How we got in this mess is it passed the concealed carry permit law in 2006. Part of the package of bills that passed through the legislature was one that restricted what cities could do as far as who can carry a permit, where you can control guns. Our ordinance that was in place at the time was too restrictive according to that new state statute, so the council at that time repealed that law. Same session, same year, 2007, you adopted the UPOC, Uniform Public Defense Code. That's the state law that's been codified for use in the cities, and that's a very good law too, but that's for this entire state. So the way that statute is drafted, and now 10.1 in the UPOC, is it covers pheasant fuels. Deer hunting. You carry a loaded gun when you're out hunting quail. It isn't designed for urban scenarios with gangs and the problems that we are facing. So, probably without thinking about it, at least that's the way I read the history of the law. At least from 1981 to 2007, we banned the open carry of loaded weapons in the city of Topeka. After concealed carry was passed, they repealed that law, adopted UPOC, but there's no indication that anybody ever really considered does UPOC fit an urban situation? Does it really cover what we need to be covering at this point in time? The statute there's copies of the handout I gave you. The legislature passed a statute trying to restrict what cities and counties can do, saying you can't pass laws that interfere with our concealed carry law. There are limits as far as where the cities can pass laws. But it did specifically authorize two areas that we're addressing in this draft. One is City Hall, Municipal Court, public buildings. These are still allowed to restrict people carrying loaded weapons into these kinds of places. There's a state law that bans it outright from district courts and places like that. It doesn't require it or mandate it for city buildings. It's up to the city to pass the ordinance. And it also authorized the city to pass a law restricting carrying openly loaded weapons. And so the legislature restricted what cities can do, but they specifically authorized us to do the two things that this draft would do. The draft does not interfere with the person's ability to carry a weapon on their own property or fixed place of business. That's all still protected. What it does do is that you cannot carry openly a loaded weapon in the public access places of Topeka. Buildings open to the public, the streets, places like that. And it specifically also says you shall not carry a loaded weapon into city court, city hall, city-owned buildings, trying to control and restrict those situations. There is a U.S. Supreme Court case pending. You may have read about it, and I'll just cover it real quickly. There's an attachment, I think attachment B or C probably, that addresses that and gives a little bit more information. But essentially, the Chicago case was argued like the 2nd of March. What they're doing there is they're saying that Chicago banned handguns, they required all handguns to be registered, and they said that you can't register handguns. So this is an outright ban. The U.S. Supreme Court took that up for argument. Essentially, that's a discussion about does the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms apply to state law. There was a case that came out 2008 that applies to federal enclaves. Because you're probably in your high school civics class, the Bill of Rights was passed right after the Constitution was passed to protect the citizens from a too powerful central government. All rights not conferred to the federal government are reserved to the state. So in the 2008 case, the Supreme Court basically said it doesn't apply to individuals. They do have an individual right to possess firearms, and on federal property that applies. They then took that case and they used it as the basis for this appeal. So they're saying, well, this should apply to state rights as well. It should apply to state constitutions. And so that's what's being argued now. If the court decides yes, it does apply, I think all they're going to say is that, okay, it does apply, an outright ban is illegal. I don't think they're going to say that states or cities are not entitled to rule and regulate and restrict those same guns. You just can't ban them outright. The reason I base that is language from the 2008 case, the District of Columbia versus Heller. Like most rights, the Second Amendment is not unlimited. It is not the right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever in any manner whatsoever and for whatever purpose. And they didn't talk a lot about the scope of the future cases, but it should not be taken to cast doubt on long-standing prohibitions on possession of firearms by felons, the mentally ill, or laws forbidding the carrying of firearms in sensitive places such as schools and government buildings, or laws imposing additional qualifications on the commercial state. So I think even if they do come out with that decision within the sometime near future, it's not going to affect this ordinance. They're not going to do a ban saying we can't restrict these things. It's what they're going to say is you can't ban private possession of guns overall, and that will apply to states. We'll see how that thing comes out. So essentially, you have a policy decision to make. On behalf of the police department, I think we'll enforce whatever you guys do. But we wanted to view and make a conscious decision, which I'm not sure was made in 2007 when the law was repealed. Do we want open carry of firearms? Most people who do it, the Second Amendment enthusiasts are not going to be a problem. It is the gang people marching their turf and intimidating the neighbors and the witnesses is a problem. It's the psychopath not ready to commit a mass murder. It's a problem, and it really restricts our ability, and it opens us to lawsuits. If it is somebody who's very angry at a zoning meeting or code hearing or this council, it would be a problem. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman, this is not on tonight's agenda. This is a work session for the discussion because it will be bringing before the council. So at this point, if there are questions of the trial or Chief Miller, we would like to entertain it so that when it comes forward, the council will feel it has had time to discuss it. Questions of the
I was late, and I apologize to maybe this question was answered. It's no secret. I was asked. I definitely am a believer in the rights to bear arms legally. But initially, how did this come about? Was this brought forward to us by legislation from the state what they did? Or was there somebody internally that said this is what we need to do? How did it originate?
You're talking about the proposed ordinance?
Right.
I think that's probably my responsibility. There was a sign downstairs where the security guard entered saying no weapons allowed. I checked, that ordinance had been repealed. So I started looking in to see what exactly the law was. There was, I think, a gentleman in the audience and an endorsement lawsuit that started making inquiries to the chief of the city council. So I did further checking, and we discovered that we had, in fact, repealed what everybody thought was the law in 2007. So at that point, some of the issues came out. We did, in fact, have an individual with a scope rifle parked at Kansas Bridge. The officer stopped. It turned out to be going to a pawn shop. An elevated location with a scope rifle got the officer's attention. And so it became apparent that we needed to address this, at least have the council make a decision on it.
Is there a court case or a court issue around this presently, or is there the state looking at it for an amendment or a change?
There are 2 or 3 bills before the state legislature. One is House Bill 2685, which would basically remove the protections about carrying concealed weapons in all government buildings except public schools, unless that public building had a magnometer and guards at each door. So that basically concealed carry persons could carry it in any government building unless someone with the expense witness the guards. There's another bill, Senate Bill 405, which would reduce the standards, if you will, make it easier to get concealed carry permits. But I don't think it addresses buildings per se.
Are those issues being looked at this year?
Yes, they both have hearings. Neither one has gotten out of committee, though. It's getting pretty late here.
Well, I need to update myself on this. I guess this kind of hit me from left field. I didn't see this coming. And so, but you answered my 2 questions I was going to